recording just so that it's happening. But yeah, hi everybody. How are people doing today? So yeah, it looks like people are slowly trickling in. That's great. Oh, and I just see Olivier joined.
How are you, Ariana?
I'm good. How are you, Olivier?
Good, thank you. Let's see here what's happening. Okay, great.
Okay, so we starting to get questions. So from Mark, we've got, I'm a designer with lots of work experience studying OCAD. Is this a course for me? Is it related to Don Norman's teachings? I guess to start, it like you'll hear a bunch in UX design. It depends on what you're looking for and what you're trying to get out of the program. It's definitely related to Don Norman's teachings, just because Don Norman was a big name in UX design, and it's something you definitely will talk about in the fundamentals of UX course.
Yeah, it's not just Don Norman teaching. There's a whole bunch of other stuff, but yes, it is a user-centered design type of approach. So we get quite a few students from OCADs in the past few years. Like I would say, this has been increasing kind of on a constant basis. We started with very little OCAD student about 4 or 5 years ago, but now we have like 10, 15 every year coming in, if not more sometimes. So, I mean, the word designer is a very tricky word. So when you say I'm a designer, I'm not sure what that means really. Like, there's definitely OCAD has their own kind of definition of design and their own way of training designers. We're not a design program, so we don't train designer in a similar way for sure. Like yeah, graphic web designers. That's what I thought. So is this program for me? Well, it really depends on the your background in user-centered design, yeah, sort of the Don Norman type of approach, but also like what's more generic, like user-centered design type of background, design thinking, the IDEO design thinking, that kind of stuff. So I'll give an overview of the program, the courses, and maybe that will give you like a little bit of an idea of whether this would be a good fit for you or not. Like. And if you have more questions, of course, you can come back and then we can chat some more.
Ooh, common question from a sim. Do you need to have a design background to pursue this concentration? You do not. A lot of the people that I've worked with in group projects, their backgrounds have been sort of all over the place, from library science, teachers, I've had people from comp sci, I think
Yeah,
like
engineering, architecture.
engineering. Yeah, so wide range of backgrounds. So you don't necessarily, if you're still in the beginning stages, that's okay. That's sort of what the fundamentals of UX course is for. So everybody kind of gets to the same level by the end of the first term, because you're taking courses in fundamentals of UX, information architecture, um, like user-centered research. Yeah, I have a math background. What kind of skills or design programs do I need to learn? Does this program offer relevant courses? So, like, at least from what I've experienced. So, for context, I am a first year master's student in the UXD concentration. And you don't necessarily need like fine art skills for this program. If you can draw lines on a piece of paper, that is like you'll survive. Like that's in terms of what programs you need to learn, again, you know, like we had people come in who haven't started, like hadn't tried any design programs before. But if you were to get started with anything, Figma is definitely the big one. Just because like it's a common rapid prototyping tool. A lot of companies are using it more and more nowadays. It's sort of a pacing sketch, which was the original sort of big player in like the rapid prototyping game. And like that's sort of like the main design program. Like it's also great because it's like platform agnostic, so you can use it whether you have a PC or a Mac. Sketch is limited just to Mac. Yeah.
Yeah, let me just maybe get started on some of the presentation of the courses, and this may help answer some questions that people have. Like, and then what we do typically in these sessions is I'm gonna just outline some of the program in terms of the way the concentration is set up, and I'm going to answer some of the most common questions that I've been getting in the past 4 or 5 years. And then while I'm doing all this, please feel free to type your question in the chat if you have some, or if I don't touch on them. And then I promise at the end I will come back and I will go through all the chat, and Ariana also, and I think we have Rashni over here with us today as well, will help. So I'm Olivier Saint-Seer. I'm the concentration liaison for the UX concentration. I've started this concentration in 2016, so it's fairly recent. We're in its fifth year right now. We've started with about 32 students, and now we have over 250 students. So the growth has been quite impressive over the last few years. When I say 252 students, it's about it's of course a mix of the first year and the second year students. On any given time in our master's program, the entirety of our master's program, we admit about 260 to 270 students. And we don't admit you on the basis of the concentration that you pick. We admit you into the MI degree. That is very important. We do not admit students into concentration. We admit people in a master's degree. Once you get admitted into the master's degree, you can pick whatever concentration you want. It is totally open. You don't even need to get a signature or get a piece of paper or get permission. You just go into the enrollment system and you decide to pick which concentration you want. If you pick a concentration in our MI degree and halfway through the degree you decide that you do not want to do that concentration, but you want to do another one, no problem. You dropped your first concentration, you add a second one. All the courses you've done in your first concentration now becomes electives in your master's degree. You have to complete 16 courses in this program in total. And based on which concentration pathway you pick, there will be some required courses that you need to complete to get the concentration designation on your transcript. But if you do not complete the required courses in any given concentration or in more than one, it's okay. It still counts towards your master's degree. So at no point in time you lose courses, or you say, well, I started in UX, now I'm interested in human-centered data science, or halfway through my first year I'm switching. What am I going to do with all these UX courses that I've done now that I'm not in UXD anymore? Well, they will count as one of your 16 courses that you have to complete. So is it possible to do UXD and human-centered data science with co-op? No, it is not possible to do this. To do the co-op student, you need to do the co-op option. You need to pick one concentration first, because the requirement to get enrolled in the co-op option is that you have to have 4 out of the 5 courses completed in that concentration by the end of your first year. So we admit people into the MI degree, and then if you decide to go in UXD, you will, and give me 1 second here. I'm just trying to share my slides here for a second. I hope everybody can see this. Yes? Great. So when we talk about user experience, we look at these 4 circles here. We look at users' goals, interaction, business goals, and content. And each of our courses are designed to be touching some of these circles, not all of them at any given point in time, sometimes 2, sometimes 3, sometimes 1. It really depends on the course and its learning outcome. So users' goals are obviously very important to consider, and I think this is central to all the courses that we have. Users have intention. They want to achieve something whenever they interact with an information systems. And the whole user-centered design approach kind of guides you towards understanding what are the users' goals, their needs, how to empathize with users, which is a very important point of UXD, and basically put the user at the center of your design process. Of course, users need content in order to interact with. So we have a course like, for example, in information architecture, where we focus on laying out content, where we focus on how to organize content, how to manage content, how to best display content so that we create the proper visual hierarchy and the proper visual information flow of that content in order for the user to be able to understand that content. On the other hand of the spectrum, users also need interaction mechanisms. So they have all kinds of different ways to interact with the content. There's interaction through the web, interaction through mobile devices, through laptop computers, desktop computers, smart boards, wearable computers, virtual agents, controllers when it comes to gaming, et cetera, et cetera. So each of these different modalities of interaction has different widgets, different capabilities, different buttons, different ways of inputting information to interact with that content. So we have a course on user interface design where we learn about some of these interaction mechanisms and what are the possibilities of interaction for users given a certain platform. You cannot interact having the same interaction degrees of freedoms or opportunity if you are on a mobile device versus an Apple Watch or like a laptop computers, right? They have different modalities of interaction. And then not to be neglected are the business goals. A lot of the times when we do interaction design or user experience design, whether it be for nonprofit, for-profit, for government, for private corporation, public, et cetera, often the users' goal, the business goals needs to be considered to be a central part of design process as well. We don't touch too much on this in the first class in the foundation because we're really busy looking at user goals, contents, and interaction, which are like the piece that we really need to master and to get solid. But in the later course, especially in the capstone course, in the representing UX class, which is one of the last class you take in the concentration, we do focus quite a bit on organizations and business goals and how to translate some of these values into design. So we don't just talk about user-centered design, but we talk about value-centered design. And we talk about aligning the organization's value through its goals with the user's intention and reactions in order to make sure that whatever the organization wants to promote as a user experience is actually what the users are experiencing when they're interacting with the organizational layer of the experience of the process. So, and then the intersection of all of these things makes a UX, right? Create good user experience. You have to consider all 4 in order to break down things and to really go deep into like breaking down the UX and fully understanding what is going on. Each of these circles can be, of course, further expanded into more. So some of these circles are tapping more into business skills and sort of marketing and understanding organizational structure Some skills interact more in people's, some of these circles, like the user's goals, for example, is all about user research and empathizing with users and understanding the user's journeys and the user's pain points. So it's very people focused. The content is has to do with a lot of the ideation, a lot of the prototyping, the evaluations. How do you mock up contents in order to actually make sure that you're meeting these users' goals? And then the interaction is obviously closer to graphic design, to graphic libraries, widgets, graphic components, people who have studied composition, colors, typography, the relations between negative and positive space in a composite space. So a lot of interaction devices that we use on a day-to-day basis. The screens have followed principles of compositions, principles of visual hierarchy, et cetera, et cetera. So while our school is not a graphic design school, this is not who we are. We will not transform you into being a graphic designer, because that's not what we cannot do this, right? If you want to do this, there's way better programs for that than our program. We will still teach you some of the foundations of typography, colors, compositions, et cetera, because good UX people need to recognize the importance of having balanced all these elements into interaction, right? So, so this is pretty much the way that to think about what good user experiences are when you look at these 4 different circles and then you start breaking them down. In order to teach some of these courses, we have 5 amazing professor, or I should say 4 amazing professor, and myself. We have Tony Tang, who is an associate professor and associate dean research as well, teaches a course on information architecture, and he's a specialist on AR, VR, so augmented reality, virtual reality. So he teaches a course on AR, VR as well. We have Valian Pendeleev, who, like me, is a teaching stream professor. So teaching stream professors really take care of the teaching and the student experience in the program. We have typically a higher teaching load than some other professors because we interact with students. We have more contact time with students and more teaching. Professor Pendeleev teaches the a user-centered design course, which is focused on user-centered design research. And he also teaches the user interface design course, which is focused on some graphical components, some libraries, studying design systems, studying different kinds of design guidelines for all kinds of different platforms and interfaces. We've just hired 2 new professors. They just started 2 weeks ago on January 1st. Anastasia Kosmunik is just joined us from the University of Waterloo. She is a specialist on conversational agent. So in the next couple of years, Anastasia will probably introduce courses on voice user interface, chatbot user interface, anything that is like sort of where we're going using our voices and conversation mechanism much more now than ever before to interact with user interfaces. And she also teaches our user-centered design course. And we also hired just recently, 2 weeks ago, Priyank Chandra, who comes from the Faculty of Information iSchool at University of Michigan, which is one of the top iSchool in the world as well, with ours at the University of Toronto. And Priyank Chandra is a specialist on user interface design and human-centered design for marginalized users, BRIC countries, and Global South. So he looks at access to information technologies and access to user interface, human communication technologies in the context of countries and users which do not have always the same type of resources that we may have in first world countries when it comes to communication infrastructure, privileges, et cetera, et cetera. So he has a new course this semester on information and communication technology for marginalized populations. So Priyank Chandra is an extremely good mix between the culture and technology and UXD concentration. So he bridges that gap very well. In terms of the required courses, you're looking at 5 required courses. If you want to do the co-op option, you have to have the first 4 completed by the end of your first year: 1602, 2170, 2169, and 2191. If you are not looking at co-op, and you're looking at doing maybe like 1 concentration without co-op or dual concentration, you do not need to complete all first 4 UXD courses in your first year. You could do the first 2 of your concentration number 1 and the first 2 of your concentration number 2 in your first year. And then in your second year, you can finish the concentration. So you're free to basically carve your own pathway. Some students who do 2 concentration do a little bit of mix of both throughout their degree. So 2-2, 1-1, 2-2, or some other students will finish 1 concentration first, except the last course. And then in their second year, they will start a second concentration and do a lot more on their second concentration. And in the last semester of second year, they will finish both last 2 required courses, 1 per concentration, to finish their degree. So it's totally up to you how you want to plan this, whether you want to tackle both from the get-go and always be having a foot on one and a foot on the other, or you want to do focused on one first, finish your first year, then focused on your second concentration after. So in the fall semester, we do have a course called Fundamentals of UX, which is a studio-based course. It introduces you to the basics of user experience design and design thinking. So it's Ariana and Roshni and Panis both have taken it in the fall semester. So if you want their opinions on this and their way of thinking, they can help you for sure. We normally do this in studio classroom. I have designed 2 UXD studios in the last 2 years. One a 48-seater studio space. Another one is a 72-seater studio space where there's like whiteboards, sticky notes, markers, all kinds of things to do design thinking, to do ideation. One of the studio also has technology enhanced capability of wirelessly projecting onto TVs. Unfortunately, these studios were closed due to the pandemic starting last March, and they have not reopened since. So it's a very unfortunate time, but you know, it is the way it is right now. So in the fall semester of 2020, which just finished right now, we have switched to online. So we use tools like Mural, MURAL, to do online design thinking, digital notes, digital whiteboarding, et cetera, right? So we've had quite a few tools that we've introduced to do things online. We've done all the presentation, student presentation online, all the ideation sessions online. So we have managed to do something fairly decent, I think. I mean, given the current situation and the pandemic, and you know, like you have to cope with what you can. But it worked fairly well, I think. I do prefer teaching these courses in person much better than in a remote setup. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a remote teacher. I'm somebody who wants to be with the students in the studio at any point in time. But you know, for now we had to adjust. So I'm just gonna give you a sneak peek of what the studio looks like. That's gonna give you an idea of so this is our studio in the basement. So it's a 48-seater studio. It could take, there's 12 tables of 4 students each. You could see how bright it is and the colors, and it's meant to do group thinking and group work. It's there's whiteboards. You can see the whiteboards on the left and the whiteboards on the right. Here, like on the green wall and on the blue walls. They're portable whiteboards. You can you bring them with you at your table. They're very light, and you can ideate and you can present. And so this is our sort of basement studio. And for the UXD students, if you are taking UXD course and your concentration in UXD, this studio would be open 24/7. So of course, when there's courses in there, you cannot go, but any other time, 24/7 access to work on your group project, your design thinking. It's our collaborative space for UX. I know not many students who are online right now, Ariana, Rashni, and Paniz, have experienced this. I'm really sorry. But sometimes I do have office hours in the studio. And I go and I chat with the students. I help them with their project. One of my favorite sessions that I do normally is when I bring my dog in November in the studio, because November is an extremely busy month, and the students kind of need this pet therapy moment where they can just pet my dog and see my dog, and my dog's always happy to see the students as well, so he loves seeing students. So we have another studio as well, which is this one here. So this one is our technology enhanced design studio. It is, as you can see, there are big screen TVs around the room. It's a much bigger room. It's 72 seats. There are tables of 6, tables of 4. You can come in with your iPad, your iPhone, your Android device, your MacBook, your PC, and you can just synchronize your laptop with the TV wirelessly, and you can start presenting. You don't need any wires, any HDMI cables, or any of that stuff. It's just remote through the Wi-Fi network. But it is also equipped with whiteboards, pencils, sticky notes, et cetera, et cetera. So these are 2 brand new classes that I'll be very honest with you, I just can't wait to go back to. It just breaks my heart to not be in these classes right now. But so I know I'm mentioning this because I know how stressful some students are to have online courses, and they say it's not the same thing. But I really try to ensure that some of the foundation courses in the falls and the studio teaching was, as good as we could make it an experience for the students. And I'm so glad that we have tools that nowadays can help us do, like, digital sticky notes and digital whiteboarding and all of these things, because it's very important to have these tools and integrate them into our learning process. By the same time, also, students also learn some of these tools, which is not a bad thing, because if, like, some companies are now converting to online only, like Shopify closed down all of their offices. They don't have any office. They're a completely virtual remote company now. So as you're gonna work in UX in the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years, my guess is that there's a lot of the remote learning and the remote working style that we've learned throughout this pandemic that is going to stay as part of the UX industry. So learning these online tools and learning how to work remotely is an advantage. When I worked for IBM years ago, like it's already 13 years ago, in 2007, 2008, 9, 10, we were already doing remote learning and remote teaching and remote working with different groups of IBM across the globe. So, and we did not have the tools that we have today to do this kind of stuff. So it's good to learn this. In fact, I would say that of all the fields in our master's degree, UX, data science, and ISD are fields that already had a certain percentage of their workers working online. Like, I have students who graduated 2, 3, 4 years ago from the concentration who work for a major bank or major banks, and they work online. They have decided, they were given a choice when they started their job. Do you want to be a work from home person, or an office type person, and they decided to be a work from home all the time. Like they don't have any office. They just have like one of those remote laptop docking station that they can go into a mobile office if they want to once in a while. But so this is very encouraging to some extent, and I want to keep the positive things out of this, because even though the job market is not the same, even though the economic times are not the same, in UX, because we already had a culture of working from home and working remotely often and doing remote usability testing have been a thing since the last 20-25 years, right? So the adaptation of the field of UX into this new world was very quick, and did not prevent people from hiring. We still have lots of co-op position opens. We still have full-time students that are graduating. They're getting full-time jobs. They are starting brand new positions. The companies are still hiring. So I see this as a very positive thing, because we are, quote unquote, not afraid of technology and not afraid of trying different user interfaces and breaking different user interfaces. We were able to adapt to this fairly in a fairly good way. So there's some positive in there. In the fall, you're also going to take a course on information architecture to learn how to architect information. We use web design in order to teach some of these principles. We do not do web development, so this is not a course on CSS and JavaScript and all of that. It's a course on design, so it's how to design web structure. And then you can take the User Center Information Systems Development either in the fall or in the winter. It's offered on both semesters. It is our User Center Research course. So it's Foundations of User Research and User Center Development. In the winter, which is this semester, we have our User Interface course, which looks at some graphic design, studying design systems, guidelines and rules for designing under different types of platforms. We also move to high fidelity prototypes. Like a lot of these courses in the fall semesters, we stop at medium fidelity prototype, wireframe, black and white wireframes. But in the user interface course, we move to high fidelity prototype. And then in the last term of your second year, you do the Representing UX, which is the capstone course. It's an experience mapping course in which you do a project with a community, like a real project with an organization, and you take it over. So this is when I'm done this session at 3 o'clock, this is what I'm about to do, assign projects to my groups of students in 2192. I teach the first and last class of the concentration, so I get to see the students in their first and last semester. And then we have also the other profs that I've outlined here that are teaching the other courses. In terms of the electives courses, I mentioned this in my presentation. Elective courses in our faculty are capped at 35 students, so there are more limitation to some extent for elective courses, but we have a whole range of courses, video game, UX research, accessibility, inclusive design, usability assessment, information visualization and human-centered approaches, UX for mixed reality, UX for GLAM, which is the elective that I teach, which is UX for gallery, library, archives, and museums. So I get to teach to some of our LIS, ARMS, and museum studies students about the principles of UX and UX design. Professor Chandra's new course, ICT, Information Communication Technology, Design and Marginality. We have a new course on UX leadership and influence. We also have a PhD level course that some of our students are taking on interaction design. And next year, most likely next year, we're going to get a course on conversational agents. So that is going to have, there's a whole set of courses that you could take if you want to sort of go deeper. They're offered in the fall, the winter. Some of them are offered on a bi-yearly basis, some on a yearly basis. It really depends on the planning for the courses in any given year. Portfolio is very important in UXD. So We do not require a portfolio to get in, so please do not worry about that. Okay, so we don't admit into concentration, as I said. We admit into a program, a master's level program, and then you pick your concentration. However, if you want to get UX employment, whether it is co-op, internship, or full-time employment, you will need a portfolio. This is an essential component of applying for a position. So we start creating the portfolio in INF 1602, which is the Foundation of UX course. You start your portfolio with a tool like Wix, Weebly, WordPress, Squarespace. There's all kinds of different ways to do this. I encourage online portfolio. Some people don't want it. They want a PDF portfolio. That is fine too, but I do encourage online, much easier to send to employers. There's a basic URL that you can add to your CV, or even some HR systems application for jobs. They ask in as part of the application process, the URL for your portfolio so often. You'll have an About Me page in there, and you'll have different cases based on the course projects that you've done. And then this is the beginning, right? Like, so your portfolio is not to be completely finished in 1602. It's the beginning of it. And then every semester, you're going to add projects. And hopefully by the end of your 2 years, you're going to have a very good, polished and busy portfolio, right? Made of different projects, different things that you've done. And then you'll be able to use that in order to apply for jobs. A question I often get is, if I already have my own portfolio, can I use it? Of course you can. You still have to add the schoolwork that you do in the school in your own portfolio, but you can definitely use it. That's not a problem. So some of the very common questions that I get: do I need to be technical to do this degree? And the answer is no. This is not a UX development degree. It's a UX design degree. The D stands for design, not for development. So we do not learn how to code. We do not learn CSS. We do not learn JavaScript. We do not learn, Microsoft.NET user interface development framework, none of that stuff. It's all prototype based. So we use tools such as Balsamiq, Figma. Some people use Adobe XD. Some people use Sketch. There's all kinds of different tools. I personally encourage Balsamiq for medium fidelity and Figma for high fidelity prototypes. They're fairly simple drag and drop tools where you can drag all the components of your user interface, link them together, and add attributes to your widget so that you can demo your prototype, and it shows like how your user would interact with it, even though there's no back end and backbone to the prototype. So you do not need to be a graphic designer. You do not need to be a programmer. You do not need to be a technical person to get in. From my experience, and the students can speak better to this than me, so if you want to jump in and add something, please feel free to do so. But from my experience, we get a very wide range of students in our concentration, some with technical skills, some with non-technical skills, from humanities, social sciences, psychology, engineering, computer science, architecture, business, etc., etc. We also have a very, very great diversity in terms of ethnic background, in terms of languages, in terms of class composition from all around the world. We're one of the most multi-ethnic and multi-cultural concentration in the Faculty of Information. And I've never encountered anybody in 5 years who had problem learning Balsamiq and Figma. So they're tools that can be learned. There's tons and tons of resources, tutorials, videos online. You work in a lot of group projects, so one or two students might be more versed in them than others, and they help each other, and you learn tricks from one another. It's fairly straightforward. So that's one of the questions that I get very often. The other question I get often is, do I need a Mac computer to join this concentration? And the answer is no, you do not need a Mac computer. However, a lot of our students have Mac, I'm not gonna lie. The other thing is, I've worked in industry for 8 years in UX, and I've never worked with a PC. even at IBM. Okay, so that just tells you a little bit about 99% of the UX design out there is done on Mac computers. If you ever join a firm, a company, an organization as a UX designer, you are probably going to be handing a Macintosh computer on your first day of work and say, this is your work computer. So I cannot force students to buy a Mac because they're a very expensive machine compared to a PC, right? We're talking like sometimes $2,000 to $2,500 difference between a very similar machine that have very similar characteristics and configurations. This is why I use Balsamiq, Google Drive, Figma, because all these softwares are cloud-based software and they work on PC, on Macs, or even on Linux if you wanted to, really. So you do not need to have one platform or the other. But at the end of the day, just be aware that even if you work on a PC right now and you plan to keep working on a PC, having some dexterity in the Macintosh user interface and knowing how to use a Mac properly is a good skill set to have in a UX type of position. Yeah, that's I get a lot of questions about co-op too, but they're often specific. Caesar is asking, do we have agreement with these software companies? Yes, we do. I have agreements with Figma. I have agreements with Balsamiq, agreements with Mural. Every summer in August or July, I renegotiate these agreements on a yearly basis so the students do not have to pay for any of those software. Ariana, can you give me a sense of whether I've missed some questions in the chat or the three of you have been answering pretty much along the way? Like,
Okay.
should I go? Should I go back to the beginning, or?
I think we've sort of answered everything as much as we can along the way.
Okay.
I might invite anybody whose question hasn't been answered so far by myself or Panise to repost it. We're doing the best we can to sort of like get to everything.
Very good.
I know there's one that was just added now. Do you know what the job prospects are post-grad?
Asim, you mean the job prospect in terms of your perspective of getting a job, or where our students are landing jobs? Like, both. Okay. So pre-pandemic, the prospects were just amazing. Like all of our students had jobs. Sometimes it does take a few months. It's not automatic, like it's you may have to wait like 2 to 3, 4 months. Sometimes you graduate in June, you find your first job in September or October. Like some people are lucky enough, they finish in April and right away they start on May 1st because they've worked on that before. Your chances of getting a jobs are also proportional to of course, the amount of effort that you put in. If you start early in the process and if you want to get started soon, then you can establish networks and contacts. We have a Slack group where I post all the jobs that are available that I know of. Sometimes employers contact me also for jobs. I have some colleagues in industry that are also looking. I put that in. We also encourage the students to network a lot. Pre-pandemic, I would send my students to like the Torkai meeting, UXPA Toronto meeting, UXTO meeting. Like there's a lot of different organizations that meet on a monthly basis so that you can network, you can meet professionals in the industry. The pandemic has slowed that down a little bit. These organizations still meet once in a while virtually, but it's obviously not the same. We've experienced a little bit more of a slowdown since the beginning of the pandemic, like in terms of job prospect. UX companies are still hiring. I help a lot of students negotiate their job offer when it comes to conditions and salaries. So I tell you, I've been doing quite a few in the last few months. So it still is happening, but it is a little bit slower just because a lot of companies are wondering whether they'll have enough budget to support a position for the next 2 years or 3 years. And this is like there are things that are in the play right now. Like there's a lot of uncertain times in many aspects, but I still see lots of UX jobs posted. Lots of very good starting salaries too. Our graduates have been getting on average between $75,000 to $85,000 starting salaries, which is fairly good. Like in my opinion, at least is. We've had a few graduates who have started in the $65,000 to $70,000 range, but these are individual decisions, right? Like so. People sometimes they really want a job and this is their dream job and they don't mind being paid a little less to start and because this is really what they want to do. So there's all kinds of factors here. Our students are really, the banks are big employers of our students. So I would say that we have quite a few students who are in the banking sector. We have people, as I said, in the food industry, like Loblaw Digital, Sobeys. We have one person in each place. We have people, we have one person maybe too soon, people at Google. We have some people at a company called FreshBook, which is not Facebook, it's FreshBook. It's a company in Toronto that does like cloud-based billing software. We have quite a few students in small moms and pop shops, like small little startups or firms that have a niche product. Like I'm thinking of one of our graduates right now. She works for a food catering company, it's basically a startup. Like she was, and it's not because of the pandemic. She was hired there before, although now I'm guessing she has a lot of work. But this food company caters to online services, basically, right? Like you can order your food and they deliver it to different offices downtown for different meetings, different organizations, et cetera, et cetera. So just a small startup in Toronto that started just 3 years ago-ish, and then that student was asked to design the whole sort of ordering and UX component of the web interface and the app. So it varies from year to year. We have people who work, we have one person who works for Tesla. We had a student who worked for Bosch for a year or two, which is in Germany. So there's lots of different places. What are the advantages of studying UX at U of T rather than a boot camp? Oh, wow. Okay, I should have talked about that too. This is a question that I get very often, very often. It's very difficult for me to not be biased when I answer this question. So if I sound biased because I'm a university professor, then please forgive me. It's very difficult in my mind to compare a boot camp with a university degree. Like they're so different. Like a boot camp is basically, a lot of people in there are looking for change of career. They're looking for a quick way to turn on a dime. So they've been working in some place for many years. It doesn't work. This is not what they want to do. They look at the job market. The job market seems to be fairly favorable in UX right now for whatever reason. And they say, okay, so what's the fastest way for me to turn my career around? Some of these people have kids or have family situations that they have to take care of, or later in their career at times. Some of them are fairly young as well. Like I'm just saying, like boot camps are there to offer a quick turnaround solution for people who are looking to reorient their career pretty quickly. I'm not saying they do a bad job. I'm saying that this is their purpose. I'm going to ask you to reflect on a few things when it comes to boot camps. First of all, who gave these boot camps the authority of conferring whatever it is that they're giving you on you? They do not have any authorities to do so. Their programs are not regulated. They're not checked by the government. It's just a bunch. Basically, it's somebody who woke up one day, opened up a company and said, you know what? I'm going to make money. And I'm going to make money by packaging a bunch of courses together and a bunch of stuff together. And you know what? They're not stupid. They're very smart to have done that because there is a demand for that right now. As I said, there's lots of people looking to reorient their career. The prospect of learning something in 9 weeks or 12 weeks and be done with it and move on is very attractive to them. for, by the way, a price that is extremely expensive, right? We're talking about like $12,000 for 9 weeks or 12-week education. It is not a cheap price. So, but at the end of the day, none of these companies have any authority whatsoever to confer any certificates or any training on you, because they're not certified by the Ministry of College and Training Education. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if a boot camp works for you because this is what you want to do, turn your career around and turn your life around, I would say, it's probably is the best option. A boot camp will follow you as far as what you do in this boot camp is still the flavor of the day. The day when it's not the flavor of the day, your boot camp education is not valuable anymore, or not as much valuable anymore. If you do a boot camp in UX, you will probably succeed, to be honest. I'm not going to lie to you. You're probably going to find a job. But what about if UX is not a thing in 10 years from now, or 5 years, or 6 years from now? I cannot guarantee that. Nobody has a crystal ball. Your boot camp will have no value at that point. A master's degree will follow you for the rest of your life, no matter where you go, no matter what job you have. It is 2 letters, MI, that you're going to put next to your name after you graduate, and it's going to follow you for the rest of your life. So if UX is not a thing anymore in 6 years, it don't matter, because you don't have just a UX education. You have a master's level type of education, and you've taken other courses, and you have mastery of skills. And so, one day when you're in your 60s and your 70s, your master's degree is still going to be part of who you are. It's going to be on your CV, and it's going to be part of your education pathway. I'm not sure if you can think about a boot camp in the same way, to be very honest. I also don't think that learning UX in 9 weeks is doable. You can certainly do the basics of UX in 9 weeks, prototyping, this, that. We do it in 1602 in 12 weeks, foundations of UX. But you have another year and a half to let it sink and think about it and reflect on what you've done, and learn and build the linkage and the relationship between other courses that you're taking, and the UX course that you're taking, and you actually are letting it sink for 2 years, which is the reflective process, which is what makes you a master's level type person, right? So if you talk to any of our students who have started this master's program, I could tell you from my experience, having coached a lot of these students and taught a lot of these students and talked to them, the first semester in our faculty is transformative. It is where you rethink everything you've ever thought in your life. You talk to other students. You change your mind about all kinds of things. You ask yourself, why am I doing this? Like, why am I here? Am I in the right place? You're really excited. You're a little scared at the same time. And you know what? I've done a master's and a PhD before, and I remember being in grad school for my first semester back 20 years ago, and this is exactly how I felt. And that transformative process and that questioning process was really the beginning of my learning. It was, for me, the realization that my undergrad degree was just something to get me a piece of paper with like a nice discipline attached to it. But the reflective process and the learning and the constant re-questioning and the constant rethinking of my options is part of my graduate student experience. And I'm not sure a boot camp will offer you that as well. So it's a long answer, but it's worth thinking about it. How does the UX program prepare you for design-related interview? Whiteboard, how you present your case study? Well, that we have a UX leadership and influence course on this. If you have a chance to take it, it's a very popular course right now. We do some playbacks in the INF 1602, so we learn about storytelling, and we learn about how to storytell design, how to make it a user-centric stories about your design. We also have sometimes, when we used to be in person, we had these iSkills workshops. We still have them, don't get me wrong, but I used to invite UX professional from industry to do one-on-one counseling and interview tips. So we were hoping to restart those as soon as possible. But we do some stuff. The career office also does some stuff about whiteboarding interviews and how to present case study and all that. So it's a mix of the education you get in 1602 and the playback and storytelling, plus a mix of the career development that is available. It's a good question, though, because whiteboarding is very important. That's why I have so many whiteboards in the studio. I love whiteboarding. Okay, given the program's been outlined for a while, our guest talk session NGOs taking our guest talk session with NGOs. Yes, so the INF 2192, which is the last class in the concentration, is a very big focus on NGOs, nonprofit, community organizations. So we look at UX for small community organization, marginalized populations. We do work with refugees organization in Toronto, AIDS organization, LGBTQ organization, trans organization. We do work with homelessness, food banks, et cetera, et cetera. So it is part of some of the program. I'm not gonna lie that a lot of our students are sometimes have ambitions of working for big companies and the like big UX firms and all that, but there's definitely a place for NGOs and for nonprofit and small community organization in the program, especially in that one course. What kind of program do you use for the mixed reality? I don't know, Caesar. I'm really, really sorry. I haven't taken that course, and it's Professor Tang who teaches that course, so I don't know what he uses in that platform. Okay, thank you, Ariana, and others to answer some questions. My background's in healthcare, very interesting, and I'm interested in UX. Of course, there's jobs in this area. Lantha. I used to work at University Health Network. I worked there for 3 years, and I've done human factors and UX for healthcare devices and for usability of healthcare processes. There's a website that you can look at, Human Factors, HUMAN, Factors, FACTORS, Human Factors with an S.ca, humanfactors.ca. And you'll be redirected to the group at University Health Network that does healthcare. There's a company also, two of our students work there and several of my friends work there as well, called Medtronic in the US, which is a huge healthcare company. A lot of the healthcare UX work is done in Minneapolis, St. Paul in Minnesota. So Minnesota, Minneapolis, St. Paul is a huge, huge hub of healthcare companies. Like over 50% or 60% of the healthcare companies in the world are located in Minneapolis, St. Paul. So there's a lot there. There's Health Canada where there's a lot of work too. We have a student, 2 students in the past 2 years that have worked their co-op at Sunnybrook Hospital. Unfortunately, they had to let us go this year because of the COVID pandemic. They're not allowed to take co-op students, but we're hope that it's going to come back to normal eventually. But we have a very good relationship with Sunnybrook Hospital. Another one of our students did her co-op at Alberta Health Services in Edmonton in healthcare UX. You can also ask the students in my class. I give a lot of examples from my times in healthcare and UX. These are examples that I bring to my teaching quite often. It is a little bit more of a niche market, but there's definitely some appetite there. I can tell you this for sure, 100%. And if you and I have a talk one day, if you come to our program, you can almost book, like always book an office hours with me, and then we can go through some options. But I know this field and this area very well because I used to work in it for a few years. Okay. Can we code up our portfolio instead of using a web-based platform? Absolutely, you can. Be my guest. It's not a problem at all. You could do the work from scratch if you want. I'm not going to prevent you from doing this. A lot of our students don't have that ability, but if you do have that ability, you can totally do that. Okay, thank you, ladies, for answering all kinds of questions for me. I really, really appreciate it. I joined the session, so I apologize if you already asked. But do user experience designers use applications such as Photoshop, Illustrator, and Premiere? So we don't really teach Photoshop, Illustrator, and Premiere in our class. There are some iSkills workshops that you have on these topics. They're not offered every year. Once in a while, there'll be an iSkill workshops on Illustrator or Photoshop that you can take as a complement. They're free. So they're extracurricular things. You can take them as a complement, Rebecca. But Photoshop and Illustrators are not easy software to use. They're fairly complex in terms of what they can do. And in my experience, they're mainly used by graphic designers more than UX designers. I'm not saying that. So one thing you have to understand is when a company posts a job and they post the job as a UX designer, many companies have different understanding of what that is. It's unfortunate because the field is fairly young still, and it's lacking a lot of good definition, right? To me, there's a difference between a graphic designer and a UX designer. And in my mind, there is a clear definition of what these things are and clear differentiator. When I worked at IBM, I was a UI designer. I was a UX designer. And I worked along a whole bunch of graphic designers. And together we would build the interface. The UX designers would be mainly taking care of the UX research, doing the prototyping, thinking of the workflow, envisioning the experience, and in collaboration with the graphic designers would make this happen in an aesthetically pleasing way. I'm not reducing graphic design to aesthetic. That's not what I'm doing. But graphic design is a degree on its own. It is not something that somebody can just pick up by taking a day course or a 2-day course. Like, this is not how it works. Graphic designers learn the skills and the trade over several years in a degree. And they have courses and they have theories. And so they know how to interact with graphic design tools very professionally compared to UX people, in my opinion. The problem is that sometimes when people post UX job on the job market, they want these so-called UX unicorn. Somebody who could be a programmer, a researcher, a designer, and a graphic designer all in once. And it's very difficult to find these unicorn people. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm saying it's very difficult to find. Some people also don't, some employers still today in 2021 do not understand what UX is about completely. So therefore, they are really posting a job for a graphic designer, but they're calling it a UX design. Or they're really posting a job for somebody who knows UI development, like JavaScript, CSS, .NET programming, UI, event-driven programming, but they're calling it a UX design job. So you always have to be careful when you read some of these job descriptions, because often they'll be branded under the same title, but once you start reading the description, you realize that really what they're looking for is a graphic person, or it's a programmer type, development type person, not a designer type person, right? So be careful also with the word designer. Designer means several things. The D in UXD stands for design in our concentration, but it doesn't stand for making you a designer from the point of view of a graphic designer or an architectural designer or a product designer, like from an engineering point of view. That's not what it is. It's the design process. It's the process of designing and doing human-centered design through all kinds of different methods and tools to create experiences. So this is why we're not so heavy on Photoshop, Illustrator, and here, to be honest. Some of our students know these software. They use it in their courses. I don't care. I don't mind. It doesn't matter to me what software you use. I personally had to learn Photoshop about 10 years ago for my job, and I found the learning curve to be very steep. I mean, it's totally doable, but I wouldn't want to give an assignment to a set of students and say, oh, you got 2 weeks to learn Photoshop and then figure it out. I would never want to do this because it is something that takes a long time. So I hope that answers your questions. So we use Figma, Balsamic, and other prototyping tools. How much of this profession is design-oriented work? That very depends. In small moms and pop startup shop, a UX person will be expected to do a little bit of everything. Not coding though, but a little bit of design, a little bit of research, a little bit of mock-ups. Big, huge companies have the privilege and the possibility of hiring different people, UX researchers versus UX designers, and then you can pick a pathway. Many of our students love UX research. I'm not gonna lie, like the majority of our students probably would love to go more in UX research than UX design. I would say to a proportion of about 1/3, 2/3, 1/3 design, 2/3 UX research. That being said, not everybody who loves UX research will automatically get a UX research job because they are a little bit more niche and they're a little bit more available to big corporation in places where there's multiple roles and multiple teams of UX across. So even when I worked at IBM, which was a very international corporation with like 250,000 employees, as a UX designer, I was doing a little bit of both. I had to do prototyping, I had to do some design, I had to do some research, some evaluations. One thing I've never touched though is graphic design. Like I've never touched graphic design because IBM really valued that in order to be proper graphic design, we had to hire graphic designers, people with backgrounds and degrees in graphic design in order to work along as part of a UX team. So we had me as a UX designer, we had a UX UI developer, and we had a UX UI graphic designer, and then the three of us would actually take care of building the product. Okay. What is the difference between product design and UX design? That's an interesting question. Product design is the continuation of UX design, really. So that's a very good question, Steph number 3. Not that I want to call you Steph number 3, but I'm just saying that this is a very interesting question. Product manager or product designer, in my mind, is a continuation of UX design. It's normally a management layer type of job, not an entry level or an intermediate type of job. And when you manage or design a product, you are taking care a lot more than just the UX. The UX is a portion of it, but you're also taking care of the release cycle, the sales, the installation on site to the customers if there is, the cloud-based updates. You're taking care of the marketing of the product. So it is, to be honest, a lot of our students aspire to become product managers or product designers one day because it's the logical continuation. Product design includes UX, but UX is not product design. Product design is much broader than UX. You're going to interact a lot with salespeople and marketing people. And you're basically, it's like you're the drummer, right? You're given the beat of how the product is developed. So you are deciding as a product manager, well, here's a bunch of feedbacks from our users. And in the next 6 months, we're going to produce another release, or in the next 2 weeks, we're going to produce another release, and we're going to include these features or these improvements. And in the further release, 6 weeks from now, we're going to include these ones. And this is a higher priority to fix right now for our customers, and this is a lower priority. This is product management, right? You're not just designing the user interface and researching the experience. You're actually making the decision on prioritizing what goes into the product, and you're designing that product. And that includes a whole bunch of business components as well. So it is, we have one or two product managers so far. So we've graduated 3 or 4 cohorts of UX students. There's a student, part of our first cohort, which you graduated in 2018. She just became a product manager about like a year ago-ish or so. So she did 2 years as a UX design at the intermediate level, and now she's been promoted to product designer manager. So, but because of the user-centered design nature of UX, I consider it to be like a natural progression if you want to move to manager. Another natural progression would be to be manager of user experience and have your own team, UX designer, to manage, right? Yanni, yeah, I saw you send me an email. I'm currently a major ceramics, but I knew feel that is a question for our admission office, Yanni. So Yanni. So I see you sent me an email earlier. I saw that you CC Andrea. She probably won't have time to reply today because she's running the event, but eventually your admission office will reply to you. A very good point, Mark. I love your point here. Unicorn position never pay what they're worth as well. I completely agree with you, 100%. In fact, many design agencies often look for these unicorn position, and they are known to pay very cheap salaries and not have very good paying or working conditions because you're basically treated like just a pusher of something that just pushes the work out for clients and stuff. So I completely agree with what you're saying here. Thank you for making that point. Uh, could I share your experience, why you choose this industry? This is a long story, Josie. I'll try to make it short, but basically, in a nutshell, I choose to go in this industry because when I was a little kid, first of all, I have to say that my true passion in life is teaching. So it's like I am a UX designer. I've done the work before. I've worked in industry for 8 years. I really, really enjoyed it, but there's nothing more rewarding to me than teaching and being in front of students and working with students. So that is my true calling, and this is what I love to do, and this is what I do. However, why did I choose to go into UX per se? Is because when I was a kid, and when I say a kid, I mean like high school-ish, like, grade 9, grade 10, 11-ish type of thing. They always ask you to make a choice often between science and social science or science and humanities. The world, for some odd reason in North America, seems to be divided like that quite a bit. You have to take the strong math option in high school or the history. But what about if you want to do both, right? Like, what about if you want to do like some social sciences and some of the hard sciences as well? And I could never pick between the two. So I always find myself between these kind of two worlds. And when I enrolled in computer science in my undergrad, I also found myself in these two worlds where I could not pick between computer science and so I knew I loved computer science and I wanted to learn about it, but I loved human as well. So I enrolled in a double major, computer science and psychology, which at the time, 20 years ago, was very, very odd as a choice. Not many people were doing that kind of stuff. And and then I kept learning about humans and I kept learning about technology. And I always kept on thinking about how the two go together. And then I got into some of my professors. Then when I talked to them about this kind of passion that I had for humans and technology at the same time introduced me to this field called human computer interaction, which is at the time it was not called UX, it was called human computer interaction, HCI. And you can Google that, it's still a term that is used today in 2021. And basically I kind of fell into this and I said, wow, this is perfect for me, right? It has my passions of science and my passion of people all combined in the same discipline. So it's in a nutshell, this is what I wanted to do. Where I suck really, it's in the fine arts. And I tell my students this all the time. I mean, I play piano. I'm fairly decent at it. I have extensive music training from my youth, theoretical and practical on piano, trombone, and all that. But I cannot draw for you know what. I just cannot draw at all. I cannot anything like fine arts when it comes to drawing, sculpture, it's completely not me. So I've always struggled with this a little bit, but it's never been like a problem for me, to be honest, because as Ariana said earlier, if you can draw a line and a square and a circle and a triangle, Look at the stuff we interact with on a daily basis on our phones and on our laptops. It's made of lines, squares, and circles, right? Like, I mean, at a very, very primitive level. Don't ask me to draw it though, because you will not want to interact with that. But what I'm saying is that in order to sketch and prototype, if you can draw basic Windows components, and you could probably make it. But I would love, personally, I would love to have more aesthetic sort of capabilities. I would love to be able to do a little bit more graphically and a little bit more aesthetically when it comes to user interface. But you know what? I accept my limitation, and I also accept that there are people who my limitations for them is their greatest advantage and their greatest passion. So why not work with others when it comes to that, as opposed to try to be everything, right? But in a nutshell, yeah, I could never pick between people and science, so I decided to take a field that was both. Is it still beneficial to be a unicorn? It's very beneficial. The problem is it's very difficult, and there's not a lot of people who can do it. Sometimes just because the way, as I just explained, we've been trained, right? We've been trained early on in our school systems to pick between things and to not work on some things and work on other things instead, and this and that. So it's very difficult to be a unicorn. I know some unicorns in UX. I know people who could do coding, graphic design, experience, background. When I went to the University of Waterloo for my master's, I had a student who was registered in a master's degree, half engineering, a quarter dance, and a quarter philosophy. That was her master's degree. And I thought coming in, I was multidisciplinary. When I saw that student, I was like, whoa, this is like the true example of like, this person learns about thermodynamics in one class and then goes to a dance class in her next class, in the same week. Like that to me was like, whoa, like this is, and then after that, she goes into philosophy. And so she works in UX right now for Mozilla. And I mean, I consider her a unicorn, like a true unicorn, to be honest. Like it's unbelievable what this person can do, like graphically and programming. But yeah, I'll be honest with you, I don't know too many people like that, including myself. So there is some benefits in learning other skills all the time. There is some benefits. I always tell a lot of my UX students, if you have a chance to take an intro to programming, we have one. It's called INF 1340, Programming for Data Science. If you have a chance to take a course in intro to programming, as you are in this faculty, do it. Do it. Why? Not because you want to be a programmer, because one course is not going to turn you into a programmer, I'm telling you. Do it because one day as a UX person, you'll have to interact with programmers. You'll have to talk to them. You'll have to be part of their team. And when they open their mouth and they start talking, instead of not empathizing with them, you'll be able to understand and empathize where they come from, what language do they speak, what point of view do they have, right? Like, I worked with tons and tons of programmers in my life, especially at IBM and University Health Network, when I was doing design and of user interfaces. And yeah, sometimes if you just think about it in one way, the programmers are a freaking pain in the ass, because you design this beautiful experience on paper, and then they come at you and they say, sorry, can't do it. The toolkit that we use does not allow us to do this. Or the way we've implemented our data structure does not allow me to get this data in real time, and therefore I cannot give you that experience that you want. And then instead of being frustrated when they mention the word data structure and they mention the word toolkit and widgets and we don't have the event, I understood. I understood where they came from. I understood their point of view. So it really, really allowed me to kind of empathize with them and say, okay, well, I'm not going to think you're a pain in my butt. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to start working with you, sit down, and you're going to outline to me what is it that your toolkit can do and where you can push the boundaries of the experience, and I'm going to design according to these boundaries. So yes, having skill sets in other domains that are connected to UX, product management, project management, a little bit of programming is always a good thing. Even if you only have a vocabulary, even if you cannot code, but you have the vocabulary and the way you have a little bit of the way that others understand the world and the problems that you're trying to solve is going to help you in the long term, for sure. Like, and this is why UX is so wonderful, because it's a people's discipline. It is not, at the end of the day, it's you being the voice of the user, but also being the glue of making sure that, you know, like that experience that you're designing is doable from a coding point of view. It's going to work for the product, it's going to work for the users, it's going to work for your managers. It's like there's a lot of glue there, and all that glue between all these different disciplines is people. It has nothing to do with technology. Like it's people. You cannot build a product without people, and without people talking and communicating with one another. So I taught in computer science for many years. I've taught C, C++, Java, JavaScript, Python, like all these language that I've taught courses in at university, at U of T and other universities. And the one thing I would keep my students in the programming course all the time is, if you do not have people skills and if you don't understand people, you will not be able to design a software. Because designing something is a bunch of people arguing their points of view all the time and trying to make compromise and reaching consensus. Okay, a few more minutes and we'll stop. Could you outline the key difference between the thesis route? Oh yeah, that's interesting. Thesis route, to be honest, in UX is not a very common option. We only have 6 students so far out of around 500 students, or like a little less than 500 or 400 and so students who have done it. So it just goes to tell you that it's a very small percentage of the students. It's mainly for people who want a major research project, people who want to leave the door open maybe for a PhD, or who want to dive into some research problem that really requires not just the UX research, which is talking to people, doing interviews and questionnaires and getting pain points, but academic research. So if you want to show that this design is better, quote unquote, than that design, if you want to show that there's an impact of using this types of technology on people versus this and all that. So it's mainly for people who are interested in research and people who want to leave the option for a PhD. In fact, out of 6 of our thesis students in UXD, 3 are current PhD students. So that gives you an option, like an idea, like half of them have done a PhD or enrolled in a PhD. We also have students who've done the course option with no thesis who are PhD students, but that's. So a thesis basically is, instead of taking 16 courses, you'll take 12, and you'll have a significant portion of your time, which is worth 4 courses of your time, dedicated on a major project, research project with a supervisor that you'll need to defend. So it is not necessarily that useful in the UX industry, but again, we have students who have all kinds of interest and passion, and for some of them, their passion is advanced academic research, and that's where they decide, the route that they decide to go. Since you have a background in computer science, that's correct, computer science and engineering, did it benefit you as a UX designer in this industry? It did benefit me quite a bit, I have to say, and I'm not going to lie about that, because I do understand the back end. So UX is all about front end. It's what about people see, right? The icons, the mouse cursor, the menus, the tapping, but in the back, there's a whole bunch of technologies that are powering this. And for me personally, having an understanding of that back end I always found that very useful in my life. Like, because when I solve a problem in UX, I just don't think about necessarily the ultimate UX. I think about what kind of technology is powering this, and what can it do, and what kind of data structures are in place, and this and that. So it's but again, this is me, right? So there's people who have different backgrounds in not computer science, not engineering, are very, very successful as well. So this is just the way I think. Like, I'm more a quantitative person in nature. I'm more of a Cartesian type of thinker in nature, which is could be also detrimental sometimes, because UX is there's a lot of creative process in there, and sometimes being too Cartesian can kill that creativity. So it has for me and against me, but I would say on average, it has helped me quite a bit. But also, I've always worked in companies where, like University Health Network, IBM, I've worked in a nuclear industry for quite a number of years as well. I've always worked in company where the job description would fit the kind of background that I had. So I had to use CS and UX together. So that to me was always beneficial, right? I've read an argument that UX golden age are over. Oh, well, that's totally possible. And now the industry is expecting UX designer to be able to do much more than UX, primarily larger sense business. Yes, we're moving into the era of XD now. XD, experience design. And experience design is basically an end-to-end type of design structure where it's not only about the UX and what I call the transactional Don Norman model. The transactional Don Norman model is that there are widgets on a screen and you interact with these widgets and you have a transaction with these widgets and you get something. That is still there. You could see it when you use your phone every day. But at the same time, the field is moving much more towards XD, which is what we teach in 2192. Experiences from a broad point of view, experiences that take into account businesses, services, product, people, et cetera, et cetera. So we're definitely going into that era in the next few, like if you read some reviews about your favorite home hardware store or your favorite restaurant or your favorite place to go buy clothing, the reviews are often about the UX of the people who shop at these places, but they're not necessarily about the website or the apps. They could be about all kinds of things, like the alleys in the stores that are not done properly, the numbering of the shelves that are confusing and you cannot find your products. And there's a lot of things that influence experience. As I always say to my upper year student, if I order a pizza in a pandemic and I download the Pizzeria app and I put my pizza order together, I pay, it's very successful. Everything is clean. The app is beautifully designed. And I'm like, wow, this is great. I was able to order my pizza and I was able to pay for it and everything is smooth. But if my pizza is delayed by an hour and it gets to my door and it's all cold and is not edible, it don't matter if the app of the pizzeria store was well designed. What matters is that my food doesn't taste good and it got home cold an hour late. And that is a user experience, just as the experience of pressing the wrong button or not knowing what to press or which menu to pick from. So UX is much more than just transactional Don Norman type of model. It is encompassing a whole range of experiences that we have with people, product, and services. And this is called XD, and we need to design for this. We just don't need to design for the interaction. Okay, great. Thank you, students. You've been great. You've answered most of the question. Is it common for that people study a master's creating their own entrepreneurship? Yes and no. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It really depends of the why students are there. We've had some students do that. Roshni might be a good person to talk to about that. How many electives do we get? I'd love to explore MBA courses and CS courses. Very good question, Asim. You get to pick 4. So if you do UX only, you have 5 courses plus the workshop courses, that's 6. So that means that you have 10 electives left. Out of these 10, you can pick 4 in other places at U of T. So you could do 1 CS course, You could do one Rotman course. We have a student who's just finishing a marketing course at Rotman, and which is our business school, in a few weeks, because they're condensed course. They were like half November and half January type of thing. It's different. But yeah, you could pick 4 courses out of your 10 electives to do anywhere on campus in any departments, as long as it's a graduate level course. It cannot be an undergrad. So don't go take an intro to programming and computer science, CSC 101. They will not let you do this. It has to be a graduate course. And what I do is I have compiled a list of courses that are UX related that could be good choices for UX students in other departments across the university, because I used to teach in engineering, computer science. I have a fairly good relationship with Rotman as well, in law. So I normally distribute this list at the beginning of the semester to the students, especially the second year students who have to pick more electives, and then they can see what's available across campus. But you can also do your own search in many, like some people have a psychology undergrad and they want to take a graduate course in psychology just to stay, you know, like stay within what they knew from an undergrad point of view. They just go and they take a psychology course, right? So good question. Could you outline the elective options? So if you do co-op, you can only do one concentration, as seems. So that's something you have to consider. If you do co-op, co-op will take 2 courses out of your elective. So you have the 5 UXD, the 1 workshop course, that's 6. The 2 co-op courses, that's 7, 8. So that's 8 courses out of your 16. So you have 8 electives left. If you do 2 concentration and not co-op, then you will have 5 courses in each concentration. 5 and 5, that's 10. Plus the workshop course, which is mandatory to all students, that is 11. So you will have 5 electives left to make it to your 16. So that's pretty much how the math works out. The only exception to that would be the LIS, the library science concentration, where the number of required courses is 4, not 5. So that would give you 1 more elective. Yeah, all elective courses is to be taken at the master's level, absolutely, or PhD, but not undergraduate. How effective is UX knowledge for legal design discipline? Legal design discipline. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a really interesting field.
Yeah.
So UX design sort of, like, it can apply to many different fields, and I find that there are some sectors that are sort of starting to get into it versus there's some that have adopted it a lot faster. And legal design is definitely one of those places that is, you know, it's in the sort of the early stages of adopting sort of user-centered thinking to, you know, some of the processes they do, some of the paperwork that you have to do. So I used to be part of a collective called the Law and Design Collab, and basically
yeah, I know the Law and Design Collab.
Yeah, so
very good.
Yeah, these projects, you know, sort of taking a look at, there's a site called Steps to Justice that's trying to make legal information more accessible for people. So, you know, you're thinking about how do you know, what kind of people are accessing these sites, you know, what kind of information.
Yeah, the law and co-design project, they actually partnered for INF 2192 last year. They were one of our partner.
Oh, the law and design.
And they asked us, yes, absolutely.
Oh,
and they asked us to design a form. So this is very interesting. And also I know that the Faculty of Law has a course on design thinking as well, where they show to students who take that course how to apply design thinking principles to law and legal organizations and things like that. So very interesting experience. Yeah, thank you for sharing, Ariana. Like, that's great. Like, very nice. If the co-op is extended to 8 months, yes, do I still take the credits equivalent to only 2 courses? Yes, it's 1 course for 4 months, 2 courses for 8 months.
Can those electives also be in other MI courses if you do co-op? Yes, you can take other MI courses.
Yes, absolutely.
A lot of the students will take things in different disciplines. I know at one point I had actually signed up for, as long as it's within faculty, right? So like I had enrolled in like a museum studies course that I ended up dropping, but you know, you have options.
Yes, any required course in another concentration. Let's say you just do UX, but you want to take INF 1340, which is the programming, the intro to programming course. That is a required concentration in human data, a required course in the human-centered data science concentration. But you could still take it for you as a UX student as an elective course, right? So that would work. Like you can mix and match like that. That's not a problem.
Plus, you have the workshops that tend to be a bit of a cross section of a bunch of different fields.
Yes. The people who decide to take CDP can choose the concentration. Yeah, so CDP is a whole other ball game. I'm also the coordinator for the CDP program. So it's a combined degree program. And yes, if you do CDP, you have to pick one concentration, only one, not two. And you do that concentration in your first year of CDP. So you will do the first 4 UX courses in your first year of CDP. Then in your second year of CDP, you will do the museum science, museum study courses. And in the third year of CDP, you'll finish all leftover required courses plus elective in both. So it's 1 year of MI, 1 year of museum, 1 year that is a little bit more mixed in the third year. So we've graduated about, I want to say 5 or 6 so far CDP students who have taken UXD as their MI concentration because they had an interest in UX in museum or UX in library or UX in archive or some of those GLAM type program and sub concentration. So we've done that. Yes. Okay, well, thank you, Ariana, for staying for so long. I really appreciate it. Like,
Yeah, no problem.
who else is there? Like, is there Roshni still there as well, right? Like,
And so is Penny.
yeah. Oh, oh yeah, that's right. Yes, she just hasn't been moved to moderator. Thank you. If you have any other question, you can obviously always send me a quick email. Anything related to admission condition, whether my degree is appropriate, whether I have enough credit, what do I do for my reference letters, what do I do for my transcript? I unfortunately cannot answer these questions. Believe it or not, professors do not get involved in the admission process in this school. We get the students in September once they've been admitted. So the admission office is there for that, and they can answer all of these questions. But anything related to the UX concentration or the combined degree option, then I can actually answer these questions. So profsaintseer.ca, profstcyr.ca is my webpage. And you can see ways to contact me there, my contact information, the courses I teach, and some of the research that I do as well. So could you provide your email? Absolutely. There you go. My website is profsaintseer.ca. Not a problem. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Thank you to Ariana, Roshni, and Panis to be here. I really appreciate all your help today. You've been excellent, exceptional at answering all the questions. So thank you so much.